Then Jamie, fifth and final tip, please.
Okay, so my final tip, Craig, is validate the introverts. And for this, I guess I'll use another example. So if we take Billy. Billy is 14. Billy is a really, really hard-working lad. He's in what would that be in England now? Year 9, year 10, and sort of S3 in Scotland. And he's a really hard-working lad. He's doing really, really well. He's flying. But it's parents' evening. And Billy has got, obviously, his kind of 8, 9 different teachers. And every single one of those teachers says to Billy, says to Billy's parents, Billy's a fantastic boy, he's really hard-working, but he needs to contribute more. And it goes from individual to individual to individual to individual. And every single one is saying exactly the same thing about Billy. Now, if we think of Billy's self-efficacy, his motivation in the classroom environment, then it becomes really obvious that that's remarkably kind of draining as an individual. And I think, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit here, but throughout the whole conversation, schools are set up as a kind of extrovert ideal, and contribution is measured in terms of how you communicate in a classroom. And my argument is that we should really celebrate rather than belittle some of the more introverted people that exist in every single school setting and in every single classroom. I'll put cards on the table. I'm completely and utterly biased here because I am like the world's most significant introvert. I'm married to an extrovert, and she would tell you exactly the same thing. That an introvert in itself just means to turn in. And I guess my energy sources are found from things that are much more kind of quiet and quiet-based. And fundamentally, I was Billy in a lot of those conversations on parents' evening. So, why should we celebrate the introverts in the classroom? Well, they represent lots of the qualities that we've talked about in terms of in this interview. They work diligently, they work quietly, their attention is attuned into what's happening in terms of the learning in the classroom. And fundamentally, once you tap into that internal potential, it can be absolutely massive. The stuff that we don't see that's going on inside an introverted student's head is amazing. For me as an English teacher, when I read a piece of writing from someone who's probably more introverted in my classroom, sometimes it just blows your mind because it is remarkably powerful. And yes, their contribution in a lesson isn't verbal. And, obviously there's a fine line, and we've got a duty to kind of support them in finding that voice in a classroom setting. But how else can we celebrate that contribution that they make? And it's fascinating with teachers as well. In a classroom setting, I'll perform. And, this is a kind of performance. And introverted people can be very good at turning on the performance level of their personalities. But stick me in a kind of staff room or a staff meeting, and I will literally be mute. I won't say a word. I'll just kind of sit there. And then I might think of a way I can contribute at another point. But also we need to think about how CPD is designed and how we're giving those introverted teachers and leaders a voice. And my final point on this, it's fascinating. Someone like Doug Lemov talks a lot about this in interviews, that he's a total introvert. But then if you tap into that, look at what Doug Lemov has done for teaching across the world. Someone like Barack Obama is an introvert, and look at the contribution they made. So I think we often fall into the traps, and I know I've done it hundreds of times before, of the extroversion domination, both in staff meetings, staff CPD, the classroom, our classroom interactions. And what I'm kind of arguing for is that we celebrate the introverts and talk about what wonderful qualities the introverts can bring in a school setting.
I'll tell you what, Jamie, I'm so pleased. When I saw this on your list of tips, I was so pleased this was in there, because I've been wanting to talk to somebody about this as well. So first thing to say is I have fallen into that exact trap that you mentioned with the parents' evening, where you've got a quiet child and you're looking for something to say. So it's
totally.
the obvious thing. It's the obvious thing to say. They're brilliant, but they need to contribute more. But I've never twigged that they're going to get that same message throughout the night. And if we link back to one of your earlier tips, if the kids or the parents focus in on the negativity, they could hear, 10 positive things about that child, but the thing that's going to stick is the fact that they don't contribute. And it's, so that I am making a real conscious effort now. That's in my head now, Jamie, so thank you for reminding me about that. The flip side of that, of course, is what I often celebrate. Let's say you've got a badly behaved kid. I'm like, they could do with concentrate more, but I'll tell you what, they're great at contributing in the lesson. They're brilliant. So I'm more than happy to big up, the kid who never shuts up, but I'm knocking down the kid who, that only says a word. So that's terrible for me. So big, slap on the wrist there, but I'm going to sort that. But here's the thing I wanted to talk to you about as well. So a classic mistake novice teachers make, and I've made this for many, many years, is the classic hands up. So you ask a question, and then you encourage kids to put their hands up, and the same confident kids dominate time and time again. So we know that that's a problem. So then what often teachers do is they move to cold call. So the idea, you ask a question, all the kids think, and then you go around and say, John, what do you think about this, and so on. And it's a definite improvement. But again, for some students, that is still really quite an intimidating prospect to be put on the spot to answer a question in front of your class. And this is why I think, particularly the mini whiteboard, but other, what Dylan Williams calls tools of mass participation, are really important here, because if you ask that question, you ask every child to write it down on their mini whiteboard, then you're taking away the pressure to have to verbalise it. And as you say, introverted students can sometimes come up with the most brilliant written explanations ever. They hold up their whiteboard, and a skilled teacher who really knows his kids could potentially just kind of notice what's written there and just say, Emma, absolutely fantastic. And Michael, just tell us what's on your board, and you not put Emma on the spot, and kind of slowly develop Emma to kind of, contribute a bit more when feels appropriate. But I just think those tools of mass participation, even something like turn and talk to the person next to you, tell them what you think, is still probably better than putting kids on the spot to answer in front of the whole class. So one of the arguments for these tools of mass participation that I don't think gets celebrated enough, but you've reminded me now to celebrate it, is because they allow all kids to shine, particularly the more introverted students. So again, there's my ramble, but another argument potentially for mini whiteboards there.
No, it's a great argument, Craig. It's a really, really good argument. And, what you can't see, but to the side of me here is pages of notes that I've made in preparation for this. Because fundamentally, I know I can't kind of do this off the cuff. Yeah. And a lot of your introverted students can't do it off the cuff. And fantastic, it's brilliant. Some extroverts could just come on here and talk for an hour and be brilliant. But I know I need to have notes and notes and notes and notes that I'm surreptitiously glancing all the way through to help empower and give me kind of confidence as we're going through. And you're absolutely right, the same exists in the classroom. And I think these tips are brilliant, the cold call stuff. But if you cold call like an army sergeant without giving young people the space and time to actually think, and that's where, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but I listened to the episode where somebody was talking about wait time. And it was fantastic. I thought, yes, brilliant. Because that wait time is important for all students, but it's particularly important for your quieter, more reticent students, because they really do need that space just to think a little bit more carefully, articulate in their own heads before they can then be given the confidence to share verbally. And you're also right in the sense that, the best teachers are really sensitive about how they manage each of the individuals in their class, and it's wonderful to watch. If you've got an introverted student and that teacher understands them, and instead of not celebrating their qualities, they'll give them a little bit of time to write a little note, and then they'll say, well, I'd really love to hear what you've written and you're thinking about there. And they do share, because we all need that. We all need that space. We all need to feel empowered and that our voice matters in a classroom setting. It's so important because it's such a profoundly social environment, and we all need to feel that we have, really positive human qualities. And I think sometimes introverted kids just need that little bit more of a kind of verbal cuddle in a lesson than your extroverts do. And that's part of what makes teaching so complex, but also so wonderful, because you can give those young people a voice and to feel like they matter in a setting.
It's lovely that, Jamie. Final thing I'll just add on this. When I was writing my first book that you kind of plugged earlier on, One of the most profound things for me was Rob Coe's Poor Proxies for Learning, and one of the ones that really stuck out is that, you know, a noisy classroom is one where learning's taking place. And that has always been in my head. You know, if somebody walked into my room, like a SLT or something like that, and the class was silent, I think, oh God, what are they going to think of me here? So I'd start talking, asking questions, and so on and so forth. But when if you read anything about either cognitive load theory or working memory limitations or redundancy and all that kind of thing, we realise that the power of silence, we've spoken about this in several of your tips now, the power of a silent, focused working environment is completely underrated, I think, in a lot of lessons. And for all students that's beneficial, but for particularly those students who thrive upon silence, who, you know, perhaps don't perform or respond as well to either being put on the spot themselves or dealing with kind of noise and so on and so forth, there's a real duty for teachers to cater for all students. And often we think about differentiation in terms of, you know, easy, medium, hard, and all that kind of stuff. But no, in terms of making sure that your introverts are catered for as much as the students who, you know, are busting to tell you things and, you know, come out their shell. And I think a mistake I've made in my teaching is I always tend to favour the introverts. I always try and tailor my lessons to giving them a voice, without realising, as you say, that we need to celebrate the students who, you know, who learn and respond a bit differently. So that's my final ramble on that one.
No, it's brilliant. And I think I've always referred to it as kind of called it sacred silence. And kids say, oh, they're like, he's off again, he's off on one again. But actually it is, in a way, quite sacred. And you can make it so celebratory. Oh, you know, like not obviously... But like after 10 minutes or whatever, where you're not interjecting every 2 minutes to say, you got 8 minutes left, you got 6 minutes left, you're doing so well. But there's actually no noise in there. And after 10 minutes, you can say, listen guys, that was absolutely brilliant. We've had 10 minutes, there's not been a pin drop of silence here. Well done. And it's not a punishment. Instead, it's just fantastic, guys. We've smashed it. We've done it. So, yeah, I think it's a really important point.
That's brilliant, Jamie. Well, then...